Okay. Um, as people kind of come in and start to log into the discussion board and type something there, uh, while that's happening in the next over the next 2 or 3 minutes, I just want you to read this if you haven't already. This is the email I sent out yesterday to both you and your parents. So please read this over. Um, I'll go over kind of the important bits here in a second, and then we'll start to review and start to move forward. Okay. Just for the first couple of minutes, I want to go over kind of my expectations for every one of you. Um, and I think I kind of sum it up pretty well in this. Again, this is in your email, and if you haven't read it, you need to. Um, every time we have class, this will kind of be the format. All right, so I'll either stream, I'll either have a video. Um, Very rarely do I plan on just giving you something to do and you doing it without some kind of interaction between us. So just keep that in mind. Um, but the expectation is that you go to on campus, you reply to the discussion board question, um, and then you come here. We'll have class. I'll explain the homework. I'll explain a concept. Then I'll explain the homework, and then you guys can work. This shouldn't take the full block period. I don't want it to. I don't intend for it to. Uh, After I explain the topic, after I explain um, the homework, then I will probably move over to Teams. I'll start a meeting, and if you guys have questions, you kind of pop in and out of that meeting, and we'll go from there. Okay. Um, some things for this chat, which I'm already kind of correcting right now. Uh, if I'm going over a concept, if I'm going over homework or something like that, um, in order for me to actually like respond to a question, it has to be a specific question. So something like I don't get this, I'm not gonna answer that. It needs to be specific if this is gonna work. If that means you email me a question, that's fine. I'll have my email open this entire time. Um, but your question should like I don't understand how you got this on this step. Um, and also if you ask a question and I don't know who you are, so like gaming vids up there on top, um, I don't know who you are, so I'm not going to answer that question. I need to know your name. Um, there will be homework. All of this stuff is for a grade, so your attendance is for a grade, and I'm making it worth your while. So I think right now it's worth like 1 or 2 points in the exam section. So it's not a joke. Will it always be the exam section? No, I'll look at the quiz section and the project section as well, but they will be worth legitimate points. Okay. Homework will still be kind of graded uh, in the same way. Obviously, they'll look a little bit different, but I intend on grading it the same way. And you're required to be present for this. Think of this as class. This isn't like an optional kind of a thing. You are still in school, even though you're at home. You are still getting this education. Your parents are still paying for this. Okay, so this is required, and we are keeping track of who is here and who is not. During class, uh, keep it manageable. Obviously, you shouldn't be like laying in bed or just walk away and watching TV. Uh, Again, I'm gonna be still assessing you on all this information. All right. Um, as usual, you probably shouldn't be listening to music super loud. If you have something on the background, that's fine. Um, just to keep you a little bit more focused, that's fine. I encourage that, but it shouldn't be like you shouldn't just be watching the lesson that's happening. You need to be able to hear this. You need to be able to see questions. You need to be able to interpret everything. You having music full blast isn't going to help that. Um, the only other thing are tests and retakes. I realize some of you want to take retakes for the last test. That's fine. I'm going to figure out a way to do that, as well as tests. So we do have a test coming up, and I'm still looking into ways that's going to work. Right now, I'm thinking that you actually just video yourself doing a couple of problems and you explaining every step. That's what I'm thinking right now. I'm not sure if that'll work. I'm going to ask a couple people and see what they think. But that's where I'm kind of leaning. One-time questions. So if you like really need help on something, we can go to Teams, and I can kind of explain things a little bit more individual. Again, after I kind of do this stream, after I do this concept, whatever, I'll go into Teams and I'll just be there if you have any help. Um, with that, if we are meeting face to face, it's best to have more than one student, and or you're in like an open area. That's just rules for the school. That's to help both you and me. Um, Again, this is not an extended spring break. Um, this is very much still class. Okay. Communication is key. So if you really don't understand something, you need to tell me like right away. Because if you let this kind of go on until the test, that's it's going to be really bad. Um, and different classes will look a little bit different. Obviously, you guys are upperclassmen, so I'm going to be a little bit more lenient and probably have a little bit more content for you guys. I think with my underclassmen, I'm going to be moving just a little bit slower until they get the hang of it. But this is very much where you guys are going next year. So you will have some teachers that just do this on a regular basis. This list probably isn't complete. And as we go through the week or the week or two or the month, whatever, we'll kind of hammer out the details. So far, I don't know what your other teachers or emails you've gotten, but the Archdiocese has canceled classes for Catholic high schools and grade schools up until like the 22nd. So this isn't just going to be a this week and next week kind of a thing. At least I don't think so. So that's just think of it that way. Like this is a kind of a long-term thing. Finally, I realize some of you think that this is really dumb. We still need to cover content, and literally everyone is in the same situation. So, like, it's okay to be frustrated with this, but this is going to happen, and we're all going through the same thing. So, with all of that, I'm well. There's one more thing. First, or really last, this stream is on like a 8 to 10 second delay. So it's going to sound like I'm going really, really slowly when I'm explaining a concept, kind of like what we do when we're doing a review test. So I'm going to move slower so you guys have space to answer questions. So with that, are there any questions over anything that's on the screen? So how do we turn in work? So your homework tonight, and I'll go over this here in a minute. Uh, I think the questions are like 23, 24, and 25 on a download in on campus. What I would like you to do is to either print that out, write out all your work, just as you normally would, and then take a picture of it and submit it to on campus, or do it in OneNote, and you should be able to do the same thing. So if you just highlight everything and then copy and paste it onto a Word doc, you can do that too. It's still kind of going to be the same thing. The more work you show, the better. Some of it will be IXL, some of it will be worksheet. We're just going to work with what we've got. I'm going to explain the homework here in a minute, so just hang on. Again, the notebook work, it's like you can do it in a notebook. Yes, you can write down the question, do it in a notebook, take a picture, and submit it. That's totally fine. It's whatever you feel most comfortable with. And again, as we go, we'll kind of modify all of this. Okay. This is in your email. I do really want you to read it. It's not just something that doesn't really apply to you. If you think it doesn't apply to you, it does, I promise. This is how we're going to operate. All right. So with that, I want to go over some review stuff. All right. So everything I have on screen right here, this is everything that we've done up until this point. Okay. Some of this stuff I'm going to go over very, very quickly, and others we're going to maybe do an example or two out of. All right. So the first thing we started with this chapter was systems of 2x2 equations, which we need to know how to solve, period. Okay. The different ways you know how to solve those are substitution, graphing, and elimination. And then we also added matrix trees to that list as well. All right, and you can do that in a calculator. Second matrix, edit your matrix, RREF and then recall that matrix and hit enter, and it'll give you the answers. Okay. You need to know how to do at least one of these. Okay, and it seems like just from watching you guys work over the last 2 weeks, it seems like you get this pretty well. Um, Going on from that, though, we also have to be able to deal with 3x3 systems of equations, and you need to be able to do both elimination, so that's a really long way by hand, and then using your matrices in a calculator. All right. Besides this, so that those are the kind of the two big things that I'm really focused on this entire chapter. All right. Just solving systems of equations. If we know how to do that, we should be able to do everything else pretty easily. The second half is just matrix work. All right. And there are a couple things I want you to know how to do with matrices. So you need to know how to define elements and dimensions, and then do certain operations with them. So you need to be able to add and subtract matrices. You need to be able to do scalar multiplication and then matrix multiplication. All right. So for example, this matrix, the first thing that we really need to be able to do with all this stuff is to define their dimensions. All right. This matrix has 3 rows and 3 columns. So this is a 3-row by 3-column matrix. All right, so rows by columns. All right, and then we need to be able to add matrices, scalar multiplication, and matrix multiplication. Adding and subtracting and scalar multiplication is probably the easiest. So if we have these two matrices and we're adding them together, you're just adding corresponding elements. All right, so 3 corresponds to 4, 6 corresponds to 0, 7 corresponds to -1, and 2 corresponds to 5. So you add all those things up. So 3 plus 4, 6 plus 0, and 7 plus -1, and then 2 plus 5. You should note that for addition, the dimensions have to be the same. So you can only add matrices with the same dimensions. Scalar multiplication is even probably easier than this. So if we have a scalar times a matrix, this scalar kind of distributes to every one of these elements. So our new matrix would be 7 times 4, 7 times 0, 7 times 3. And then this is our new matrix. All right. So matrix addition and scalar multiplication should be the two easy some of the two easiest things that you do in this class period. All right. Okay. Again, in terms of homework, I want you to submit it on campus. It makes it way easier to grade and track down everything. So just that's what we're gonna have to do. All right. The other thing we need to be able to do is matrix multiplication. And for matrix multiplication, the number of columns in the second has to be equal to the number of rows in, the number of columns in the first has to be equal to the number of rows in the second. So these two numbers here have to be the same. If they are not the same, the answer is undefined. Okay. Our new matrix, though, are the outer numbers. So the first thing you do is you get the dimensions of the first, then you get the dimensions of the second, and you just see whether or not this is actually even possible. Okay, we know that this is because the two middle numbers are equal, and our new matrix is going to be a 2 by 2 matrix. This first element, this is row 1, column 1, so we have to multiply our first row by our first column. And that's going to look like 2 times 5 plus 3 times 1 plus 7 times 0. Okay, so that's the first element. The second element, this over here would be the first row, second column. So we need to multiply the first row by the second column. And then we do that for the next two. You can use a calculator. I want you to be able to do it by hand, though, as well. This would be showing your work. Okay. So that's matrix multiplication. You're just multiplying rows by columns given the element in our new matrix. Okay. So these are the operations we need to know. Matrix addition, scalar multiplication, and then matrix multiplication. The other thing that we've done so far are determinants. So for a 2 by 2 matrix, this is really easy. You just take the diagonals, you multiply those two things together. And then subtract those two things. That's all there is for 2 by 2 matrices. And then for 3x3 matrices, it gets a little bit more difficult. And I'm going to do this using numbers. So in order to take the determinant of a 3x3 matrix, you have to repeat the first two columns. And then we need to take the diagonals. So 5 times 3 times 4 plus 0 times 5 times -1 plus 1 times 2 times -2. Then we take the diagonals going up. So -1 times 3 times 1 plus -2 times 5 times 5 plus 4 times 2 times 0. And then we subtract those two things together. So we have 56 minus a -45. So 56 plus 45, which is 101. And that'd be our answer. Yes. You guys got to pay attention to like everything. All right. So we did properties of matrices, right? Elements, dimensions, operations, okay? We need to be able to add and subtract matrices. We need to be able to do scalar multiplication. We need to be able to do matrix multiplication, which is all of this. Then we need to be able to find determinants of 2x2 and 3x3 matrices. And this was the newer stuff, okay? Your homework is going to involve solving systems of 3x3 equations and determinants. All right, so for your homework, is to go to On Campus, go to Topics, and in Topics, go to Systems of Equations and Matrices. And then do 23, 24, and 25. But I want you to do them, so I want you to solve both those systems using elimination. And then I want you to find the determinant of the coefficient matrix. So in Topics, you want to go to solving 2x2 and 3x3 systems. Sorry, in Topics, you want to go to systems of equations and matrices. In that, you go to solving 2x2 and 3x3 systems, and then do 23, 24, and 25. Okay, so these are two different problems. So solve using elimination. That's it. You just solve using elimination. You get A, B, C, X, Y, Z, whatever. And then after you do that, you get the coefficient matrix, and you find the determinant of that matrix. So say the problem. Actually, I have this pulled up. So 23 says 2x plus 5y plus 5z is equal to 11. So the first problem is this. Okay. You find x, y, z. Okay, that's it. You do x, y, z, use an elimination. I want to see all of your work use an elimination, which is exactly what we did the week before spring break and the week before that. This has also been covered in previous classes. Okay, so you use elimination. You find x, y, z. Get three numbers. Okay, after that, you get the coefficient matrix. Coefficient matrix for this is 2, 4, 4, 5, 5, and negative 5, 5, 5, and 2. Then I want you to find the determinant of this. And you do that for numbers 23, 24, and 25. Okay. Are there any questions that I can address as a whole before I move over to teams? Okay. Guys, you do the first part. You do that using elimination. It's where you eliminate one variable, get a system of 2x2 equations, you solve for those two variables. You get x, y, and z. And then that's it for that part of the problem. Then you get the coefficient matrix. The coefficient matrix are the coefficients of x, y, and z. So you get this matrix. Then you find the determinant of that. I'm not going to do this problem as a whole. You guys know how to do both these parts of the problem. Number 21. Okay. In order to solve this using elimination, we need to pick a variable that we want to eliminate and then eliminate it. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to pick z. So I'm going to pick these first two. and then eliminate z. So I need to multiply the first one by 2. And we add down. And we do the same for another combination. So I'm going to pick the first and the third. Because the z's already have the original coefficient, just add down. Because the z's have the same coefficient, you just add down. Okay. Now we have a system of 2 equations with green and a red. Okay. And then we do the same thing, but we solve for a 2 by 2 system. All right. So oh, yeah. It should be 27. Which makes this 31. So x then is -2. Then you have -2 plus 3y is equal to -2. So 3y is equal to 0. So y is equal to 0. And then you plug both of these into one of the 3 originals and get the third. Okay? That's elimination. Then you're done with that part of the problem. Then you get the coefficient matrix. It's the coefficient matrix. It's 5, -1, -4. -3, 2, and 6, -1, 2, and 1. Okay, that is just the coefficient matrix. It's just the coefficients of x, y, and z. And we want to find the determinant of that. In order to do that, you repeat the first two columns. And then take the diagonals. So 5 times 2 times 1 plus -3 times 2 times -4 . And then you would subtract those two numbers and get an answer. Okay. I want you to do that, all of this, for numbers 23, 24, and 25. And then I want you to submit it in On Campus. Okay, so in On Campus, there is this 324 classwork. That is where you will submit it. And if anything goes wrong, so first thing I want you to do is actually try and submit something. That's like the whole point of this. If it doesn't work, then you need to email me. I don't want emails though. So I want this to work. If for whatever reason you can't get it to work, you need to email me and I can try and walk you through it. Okay. That's what I have for you. Are there any questions? It's due the 26th. So 2 days from it's due your next class. Okay. So that's right now, that's all that is what I'm expecting you to be able to do. Okay. So please go and try and do that. Please try and submit it. If anything goes wrong, just email me and I'll try and walk you through it. But that's all I have for you today. I will be on Teams if you need anything. So you got the next like 30 minutes or so to do this. I would highly suggest you trying to do it now as opposed to like the night before this is actually due. Okay. Do this right now. Know how to do it for the future, and then we'll move on from there. I guess you guys are seniors, so you don't know what Teams is. Because everyone assumes that you don't know how to. Okay. Teams. If you go to Outlook Online, hit these top left-hand dots and go to Teams. That's teams. You are in a period 6 team right here. We can do meetings here. This is where I would walk you through like one-on-one stuff by doing a meet now, uh, and that's that. Okay, that's all I've got for you. Again, if you have any questions, please email me.